Good morning and welcome into today's episode of Hoops Talk with Dave on Monday, March the 24th. We've got 16 teams left. We're on to the Sweet 16 now in the NCAA Tournament. 48 teams have now been eliminated, and we are down to our final 16, including all four number one seeds. Our only number two seed that is lost was St. John's, and they lost to Arkansas on Saturday, and Arkansas is the Cinderella this year, I guess you could say. They're not really a Cinderella, obviously. Lots of talent, led by John Calipari, but they are the lowest seeded team remaining and the only double-digit seeded team remaining, and that is the Arkansas Razorbacks. So let's take a brief dive previewing these matchups taking place on Thursday and Friday. BYU and Alabama. This is going to be a get up and down the floor type of game. Lots of points scored. The over-under total for this game is 20 points higher than any other game taking place Thursday night. This game tips off roughly 7:09 p.m. Eastern on CBS. The Crimson Tide is a 4.5-point favorite, but I'll be honest, I like the Cougars in this one. I think they match up really well with the Crimson Tide, and they can give them a run for their money. I don't think Alabama's been very impressive through two games, and so I like the Cougars there. Our second matchup on Thursday evening at 7:39 p.m. Eastern, Maryland and Florida. Number 4 seed, the Terrapins, they survived at the buzzer thanks to Derek Queen getting a big-time bank shot at the buzzer to lift the Terps over Colorado State. Now their reward, the number 1 seed Gators. Florida, a 6.5-point favorite over the Terrapins. Once again, tip-off for that one in San Francisco, 7:39 p.m. Eastern. Heading back over to the East region after the Alabama game. So once again, these two late games on both nights are 30 minutes after the conclusion of the first game. So the Arizona-Duke game, which takes place Thursday evening, will be 30 minutes after the conclusion of the Crimson Tide versus the Cougars. Arizona outlasting Oregon in an old-school Pac-12 matchup late last night. It was a fun one to watch. Oregon had the opportunities there late, fouling up 3 from Arizona, end up winning them the game. Duke sits as 9.5-point favorites over the Wildcats of Arizona. I think it'll be closer than that. I hope it's closer than that, at least from a viewing perspective. But this Duke team is the best team in college basketball right now. They looked very dominant throughout the first 2 rounds. I expect them to keep that going. Tip-off for this one, once again, estimated tip for 9:39 p.m. Eastern Thursday evening. In our late-night game on Thursday, expected to start right around 10:10 p.m. Eastern on TBS, Texas Tech, the 3-seeded Red Raiders, taking on our Cinderella this year, the Arkansas Razorbacks. Texas Tech is a 5.5-point favorite, but I'll be honest, I like Arkansas. I like the Razorbacks to be able to get through onto the Elite Eight. And as we look ahead to our other 8 teams playing on Friday evening, starting us off at 7:09 p.m. Eastern on CBS, the Michigan State Spartans sit as 2.5-point favorites over the 6-seeded Ole Miss Rebels. Michigan State handled everything they could coming from the New Mexico Lobos last night, and Ole Miss really dominated Iowa State. I did not see that one coming. A lot of people were talking on social media about how dominant Ole Miss looked, and this was just not on anybody's bingo card, even though Iowa State was struggling with their health. They were missing some key players, but still Ole Miss to put on that type of performance was incredible. And that's kind of led to this line here where the Spartans are only 2.5-point favorites over the Rebels, and I like Ole Miss to move on to the Elite Eight. Tip-off for this one, once again, 7:09 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Also on Friday, this is our second game. Tennessee Volunteers sit as 4.5-point favorites over the Kentucky Wildcats. An all-SEC matchup. This is 2 of the 7 teams the SEC has in the Elite Eight. That's right, 7 teams. Yes, I understand they got 14 teams in, and so that's a lot of teams to get in. It makes sense for them to have 7 teams here, but still, having half your teams that make it, 16, that's an incredible feat, even for how good the SEC was this year. A great feat for them. So a team guaranteed to go to the Elite Eight here. The Volunteers, once again, 4.5-point favorites. Tip-off for that one, 7:39 p.m. Eastern this coming Friday. And our late-night game is back over into the South region in Atlanta. Number 1 seeded Auburn, overall number 1 seeded Auburn, taking on the Big Ten tournament champion Michigan Wolverines. The Tigers sit as 7.5-point favorites. Tip-off for this one, estimated to be 9:39 p.m. Eastern on CBS Friday evening. And then late Friday night, if you'll catch this one, you're not going to want to miss this one. This is going to be a slugfest, knockdown, drag-out fight. Number 4 seed Purdue taking on number 1 seed Houston. The Cougars sit as 7.5-point favorites. I like the Boilermakers to keep it close. Tip-off for this one, 10:09 p.m. Eastern on TBS and True TV. Remember, all those games are either on Thursday or Friday of this week. That's our Sweet 16. Then our Elite Eight will take place on Saturday and Sunday. And by the end of this upcoming weekend, we will have 4 teams left. The Final 4 taking place not this upcoming Saturday, but next Saturday. So 12 days from now. in San Antonio. What a weekend it was of basketball, and we've got more great basketball to come. And speaking of great basketball, if you've been locked into college basketball just like we have been right here at Hoops Talk with Dave, don't forget the NBA playoffs are coming. We're only a few weeks away from the beginning of the NBA playoffs. We got the play-in games first, then the NBA playoffs. Depending on who your team is, you either got 10, 11, 12, or 13 games left over these last 3 to 4 weeks. And we've actually got a fun doubleheader tonight on NBA TV. The Los Angeles Lakers taking on the Orlando Magic. Lakers, 4.5-point road favorites. Tip-off for this one, 7 p.m. Eastern on NBA TV. And then our late-night game, also on NBA TV, Phoenix playing host to Milwaukee. The Suns sit as 3.5-point favorites over the Bucks. Tip-off, once again, 10 p.m. Eastern on NBA TV. And your NBA League Pass game of the night comes to you from Indiana as Minnesota travels to take on the Pacers. The Pacers sit as 2.5-point home favorites. Tip-off, once again, 7 p.m. Eastern on NBA League Pass. And that will wrap up your Monday morning episode of Hoops Talk with Dave. I'm your host, Dave Smith. Hey, thanks for staying tuned with us throughout this March, throughout all this great basketball action. We've got a lot of great coverage for you coming for NBA playoffs, as well as the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four, and the NCAA National Championship. Once again, I'm your host, Dave Smith. Thanks for tuning in to Hoops Talk with Dave.